include happiness on the plans.
Well, too much of it has been about taking the simplest route to delivering, just bricks and mortar, to delivering a roof over people's head and not thinking about the joy and the happiness side of it.
20 years ago, Wayne Hemingway was a fashion designer who believed happiness could be stitched into clothing.
Having spent 17 years running a fashion business, I was struck when I came into this housing industry. Sometimes more thought went into a blooming blouse and how you could get the joy into a blouse and make it cost effective than went sometimes into doing a house.
The wimpification of Britain was how he described it. At which point, house builders Wimpy challenged Wayne to design something better.
I have often walked.
And much to their surprise, he agreed to do precisely that.
This doesn't look like the classic Wimpy estate, I must say.
Well, the idea was to make terraces and get the kind of density that's on the government agenda, but make it feel like you've got your own individual house. This takes us into the kind of the communal gardens.
Isn't that great?
So everybody gets their own little bit of back garden, and it's got the low fences so that you can actually see your neighbours. It's got communal barbecues, and you've got the sit-out areas. You've got the gravel, the nice crunch. You've got an area.
And the communal areas are great, and the seating areas and things like that. And it just brings everybody together. It's fantastic for kids.
I would say it's a really good place to live. I think that you get a good community feel when you come down.
It has been designed on purpose to make new communities, and I think that's what's attracted a lot of people.
On the streets where you live.
I mean, this actually isn't a new idea, is it?
No, this thinking came out of how me and my wife Geraldine were brought up in Lancashire, Where you went out the back and there were what were called recreation areas, where we'd all pile out, have a game of football. When it was somebody's birthday, you get the trestle tables out. This is no different. It's landscape now, we've learnt a bit. If you design a bit of joy into things, it makes people a bit happier. And I don't think there's any vandalism on the whole development. I don't think vandalism...
I feel quite good here myself.
Yeah.
Can't be here.
Putting happy foundations under Wayne's estate hasn't added to the building costs. He argues it just requires a bit of extra thought before you start.
Where you live.
I mean, at the moment, housing by the government is being driven by delivery of numbers. And obviously, when you get obsessed with delivery, quality and the kind of happiness quotient and the joy quotient doesn't come into it.
What is perhaps, from my perspective, even more worrying is that we're throwing up houses which are not the best in terms of the long-term environment either.
Nestling in the Himalayas, Bhutan is the only country in the world where gross national happiness is a factor in policy making. So when the Bhutanese build new houses, the plans must still take account of strict cultural and environmental standards. One of the pillars of their happiness philosophy is sustainable development.
There were many advisors who came into this country. Oh, you have such forest wealth. There is so much a market in India, elsewhere. But we realized that we couldn't afford it. The forest conservation laws here in this country are so stringent. We have moderated our growth, our pace of development. Every step we have moved forward, we have asked the question, is it going to bring happiness?
Our throwaway world is making us miserable, so we're told. To be serene, you need to be green. But is it true? If it means I can't jet off on holiday or have fun, where's the happiness in that?
What's the evidence that a sustainable environment is actually a happy environment?
We don't have a massive amount of evidence of that. What we do have, however, is quite a considerable amount of evidence that an unsustainable environment is an unhappy environment. All the evidence shows that people care about other people, they care about the future, about future generations, and they care about the environment.
It may only be at the beginning, but the science of happiness encourages us to change almost everything about the way we live. It has lessons for governments and each one of us. Lessons which some believe we're duty-bound to pass on to our children.
Right, this morning we're going to have a look at happiness. Why is happiness important?
Well, if you weren't happy, you wouldn't want to go to school.
Behind the scenes, the idea that we might teach happiness in schools is being taken seriously. One government advisor has even lobbied the Education Secretary.
Can anybody help, Alex?
It's really important that this be a high prestige subject in the school, and that the teachers who teach it also try and influence the rest of what goes on in the school, because they are considered to have some expertise in promoting happiness amongst children.
At this primary school in South Tyneside, they think happiness is almost as important as numeracy and literacy.
Part of the ethos of our school, and the reason why it is successful, is that we buy into it big time. I think if children do feel happy and they're working within a happy environment, they will reach their optimum in learning.
It's more than just happy school children, though. Under new legislation, the local authority has a duty of well-being, and that means, they reckon, pupils should be taught how to be happier.
We believe that it's absolutely fundamental to quality of life in South Tyneside that we take account of happiness. We would like our children to be able to put as much of a premium on happiness in their life as they do on being very good at geography or very good at history.
The Tyneside project is a spin-off from an experiment in Philadelphia in the United States. A couple of years ago, local schools started teaching happiness as part of a psychology research program.
Now's the time when you're identifying trials too, okay? So, who'd like to be first to share?
One of my friends got leukemia, and it's just like, I think through this, like having to deal with this, I learned a lot from it.
Friday, you have a lesson about what's known about kindness. And then the next Wednesday, you have an assignment to do 5 kind things. Then you have an assignment about what's known about strong families.
So, does it work? Does teaching happiness make people happier? The first results are encouraging, if not conclusive.
We've been doing this now for 2 years, and I'm not ready to make any claims about teenage pregnancy or drug abuse or depression. But, you know, I think these kids are better people as a result of this. I think they're deeper people.
In an opinion poll for this series, NOP called 1,000 people and asked whether they thought schools should put more emphasis on achieving happiness rather than preparing pupils for a world of work. Surprisingly, perhaps, a majority, 52%, said yes. It's one thing to teach students about happiness, quite another to run a school that puts happiness ahead of exam results. SANS is a private school which puts the emphasis on creating rounded, happy people rather than on academic achievement. Pupils aren't told what to do, they help decide what to do. And on occasion, they decide they don't want lessons.
Is it possible that we can try and keep lessons running to at least the beginning of the last week of term? Because I know that if they collapse, then the last week of term becomes fairly manic. And just have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for jollies.
Right, Martin. Sorry to be sticking them up, but can I just remind you that if, in that last Christmas week, of course, if you've got Wednesday, Thursday and Friday off, that's effectively a week off your lesson time, so to get your coursework done. Sorry.
Has anyone got any major issues with that suggestion for the next 2 weeks?
The approach may seem a little unorthodox, but the head teacher, Sean, says it makes for happy students.
They're queuing up in the morning to come in. They want to be here. So I think it's got to be a measure of happiness. And most adults say, what do you mean they're queuing up in the morning and they won't leave? That's the opposite effect that we've got in our own schools.
It's called intrinsic motivation. Pupils want to learn rather than have to learn. The school's results are average. But the head argues that there's more to a happy life than getting a good chemistry GCSE.
When someone asked me, would the children do as well here as they would in a state school, I think some of them don't do as well. That matters less to me than the fact that they come out as well-rounded individuals and they had enough qualifications not to embarrass themselves to move on to the next point in their life.
I think that the danger is that our schools are becoming increasingly individualistic, increasingly motivating people by, if you want a good income and a good lifestyle, this is what you have to do.
But surely academic achievement and the opportunities it opens up can bring satisfaction and fulfillment. It's not simply exams or happiness.
I think many parents will find that quite a worrying philosophy. They want their kids to achieve their potential.
I think many people like to respond to a challenge. But what seems to me deplorable is if we give people the idea that the only thing which matters in life is jumping over hurdles. The only thing you can do with a hurdle is either just jump over it or crash into it. And it's really important, I think, in life that people can quite easily clear most of the hurdles.
It is a controversial view, but the evidence is that ambition for money, for possessions, for quick fixes of pleasure, too often distracts us from what really matters for a happy life. We need to be ambitious for friendship, fulfillment, meaning.
Sometimes people say, is there a key to happiness? Say, no, there's no one magic key. Once you find that key, you're going to be happy. But rather, there's a recipe. There's a set of ingredients that has to be put together in the correct way in each person's life. And we now know some of those ingredients. Good social relationships, meaning, which may come from religion and may come from a philosophy of life. Having goals that are interesting to work on and which use your strengths and abilities so that you find working on your long-term goals fun and enjoyable. These are some of the recipe of happiness.
The Nobel Prize-winning scientist Daniel Kahneman has devoted his life to giving humanity a way of measuring happiness so we can get better at achieving it.
What this research is going to force us to do, it is going to force us to think seriously about the meaning of these terms, such as the meaning of life, having a meaningful life, having what is a good experience, what is a good life.
Happiness is a good life. Here on the Greek island of Lesbos, Aristotle was teaching just that nearly 2,500 years ago. Now science backs him up. And modern-day politicians, indeed each one of us, is being challenged to respond.
The logic of this new science is breathtaking. If it's right, it requires us to rethink some of our most basic assumptions about how we work, how we live, and what we're trying to achieve. In short, the science of happiness may provide us with a new definition of what we mean by human progress.
If you want to find out more about happiness, visit our website, bbc.co.uk/happiness formula.
Football songs to give you a laugh next on BBC Two in a Top of the Pops 2 World Cup special.